All right, thank you very much, Madison. So, hello everyone, and welcome. As Madison, I grow garlic and other produce up here in the UP of Michigan, just across the border from Wisconsin. And I love to grow garlic. Garlic is one of the easier crops to grow, just because it's pretty hardy and it's fairly disease resistant. Uh, there are a couple of different types of garlic out there. There are two main varieties, hardneck and softneck. Hardneck has a single row of cloves with a woody stem up that will produce the scape later in the season. And softneck is similar to what you see in the supermarket. It is usually a softneck where there is no woody stem that comes up and you have multiple rows of cloves um, in a bulb. There are many different types of or varieties of garlic within the hardneck and the softneck, and you'll see Oregon blue, Killarney red. These are, a lot of these are place names. The interesting thing about garlic is garlic reproduces asexually, and it does not have the ability to flower anymore. So when you see these different varieties, these are somewhat heirloom and adapted to local conditions and producing these quite different varieties. Finding seed garlic, I recommend that you check out your farmer's market, local farmer's market, because that's going to have garlic that is adaptable to your local climate. Otherwise, there are many different reputable companies out there who sell seed garlic. And this is about the time of year you want to be acquiring your seed garlic, because you're going to be planting here in about a month and a half, 2 months. So it's important to consider when you're going to plant. Hardneck really, really needs to be planted fall. Think of garlic as a bulb where you do the planting in the fall. I usually recommend and by planting about 2 weeks before the ground freezes. So up here, I'm growing or planting garlic in the 2nd to 3rd week of October. It's not the most comfortable time to be out there playing in the dirt, but and I have actually had to shovel snow off my planting beds to do it. But that's a great time. You want the garlic to start to develop roots and then go dormant for the winter. You don't want to plant early where you'll have some top growth that might be winter killed. It's important that when you separate the cloves, that you separate out the biggest cloves and use those for planting, and use the smaller cloves for eating. Because each year you're going to, by using the largest cloves from the largest bulbs, you can increase the size of your garlic. So, it's okay if you only have a handful of bulbs to work with, that you can plant all of them. That's not going to be a problem, but you want to save your biggest bulbs and your biggest cloves for planting in October, November. If you're in the southern part of the state, I would say you've got until the 1st of November to really plant. When separating the clove, it's important to understand the base versus the growing point of the clove, because you want the base to go down into the ground first, and the pointed end coming up the top, because otherwise the garlic is going to produce a J hook and lose a lot of energy trying to right itself to grow up to the sky. So it's important that you plant basal plate down. Here's an example of what I'm talking about, where you want that growth point to be facing up. Garlic is not the most sorry. Garlic needs a nice fertile bed, good organic matter to produce well. And fairly weed free. So I usually start preparing my beds now, but that way, in case fall rains make things muddy and wet, that I'm not stuck trying to till ground or compost in wet weather. So clearing the ground and getting it ready for planting is important. I have a jig here to make 9 rows at one time on spacing. You can use any number of things to make a dibbler, which is essentially just a stick that's going to, poke a hole for the garlic, and you want the hole to be about 2 inches deep at least, because some of the larger cloves would stick out otherwise. So I use, if I'm just doing it one at a time, I like using a hoe handle or a rake handle that is about the right size, and I don't have to bend over to make the holes. If you have a bulb planter, that works as well too. And I have mine up here. I do it on an 8 inch by 8 inch. You can go 8 by 12, 12 by 12. I don't like to go narrower than 8 inches on a side, because you start to crowd the plants and they suffer from sizing up, and they're starting to compete more with each other. And I don't go much more than 12 inches, because there you have a lot of open space in between the plants for weeds to get established. So I use an 8 by 8 or a 12 by 12 or some variation of to plant the garlic. And you can see here I've used that board and my weight to make those holes in that nice soft substrate. And once and we go out and I plant about 100-yard row, not 100-yard, 100-foot row of this in the situation. You don't need to plant the garlic so deep if you're doing it with mulch. I usually have the tops of the cloves just below the ground surface and not much deeper. Again, the more energy expended by the garlics to reach the surface in the spring, the less energy you're going to have into developing larger bulbs. You can see here I've got a nice 8 inch by 8 inch grid forming with my jig. Again, you don't need to have a jig. You can use whatever to make those holes, but you can see that the cloves are fairly shallow in the soil. And the reason I do mine shallow is then I add 4 to 6 inches of good mulch. I also label,
Darrin,
make sure.
Darrin, I'm
yes.
sorry to interrupt. Your sound is glitching just a little bit. Would you be able to turn off your video and see if that helps a little bit? Also, I want to remind everybody, please put your questions in the Q&A box instead of the chat box. Sorry to interrupt. Back to the regularly scheduled program.
Okay, let's see if this is better now. Go ahead and label your garlic before you put the mulch on, so you know where your different varieties are if you are planting multiple varieties. And like I said, I use 4 to 6 inches of good quality mulch. That can be straw, that can be downed leaves, because it is October, so we have quite a few downed leaves. It is important that if you are using leaves or some of the other types of mulches that could mat down, that you may need to remove that in the spring after the snow melts or after the ground thaws out, so that the garlic can actually come through. And then once the garlic is up and green, then you can go ahead and respread that mulch around to suppress the weeds. And garlic is very hardy. You can see here, it is actually coming out of the ground as the snow is melting. I've had it come up in January thaws, and it has not suffered dramatically from a return of winter. May get a little bit of yellowing on the tips of the leaves, but otherwise, it's one of the reasons I like growing garlic is it's super hardy and it's ready to go in the spring, just like your daffodils or tulips. Once the garlic is up, you want to just maintain good, even moisture. That's why mulches are important. They provide good, even moisture. This year up here, we had a severe drought. And when I pulled the garlic underneath the mulch, I still had quite moist soils. So it's between winter protection and moisture control, mulch is very important for getting good quality garlic. The other thing does is it helps suppress the weeds. So go ahead and make sure that you're keeping those weeds down, especially if you're using mulch that may have some weed seeds in it, like hay or grass clippings or something. You may wind up having a bumper crop of weeds in amongst your garlic. Around the 1st of June, beginning of or mid-June up here, at least, maybe a little earlier down south, the hardnecks will start to form a scape. And a scape is what would be a flower stalk in any other of the alliums. But in this case, it's going to produce burbles. And burbles are just little tiny cloves of garlic. If you let them fall to the ground, they will produce small garlic plants. We tend to trim off the scapes and use those for dishes for our spring garlic fix, since most of our stored garlic is fixed by this point. And clip them while they're in the curl before they start to straighten, and they'll be quite tender. Otherwise, once they start to straighten, they're going to be woody. We take these off because we feel that the bulbs get more energy from the plant because it's not trying to produce a top set as well as trying to create those bulbs in the ground. When to harvest. Once the bottom 2 leaves are browned, that's when we harvest. Each leaf on the plant is a wrapper of the bulb. And when we see those bottom leaves starting to brown down, we know that the bulb is no longer expanding. And we go ahead and pull the garlic. And we want to do that because we want to save as many wrappers of the bulb as we can for good storability. So I know people have asked me, do I wait till it's fully browned down? If you do, it's still going to be fine, but you may find that the bulbs are not firmly secured together because some of those outer wrappers may have rotted off in the interim. So don't wait too late. When you see those, first 1 to 2 brown leaves at the bottom throughout your garlic patch, go ahead and pull the garlic. And we tend to, it's nice out, we tend to leave it out for a day or two if there's a chance of rain, to kind of let the wilting process start, the curing. And then we bundle it up into manageable bundles, hang it up in a place out of the sun with good airflow, and let it cure down to lose moisture and make increased storability. Once everything is cured, we trim off the stalks, and I tend to leave the roots on. I tend to leave all the wrappers on. I don't push any off unless I'm selling garlic, and then we'll go and trim the roots and take those outer dirty wrappers off. And then we store them in boxes, cardboard boxes or paper bags, out of the sun at temperatures that are around room temperature, maybe slightly cooler. You don't want to put your garlic into the refrigerator. It will cause mold. And it doesn't do well with that cold treatment because it's going to want to start to sprout, thinking it is wintertime. So keeping it at room temperature and breathable materials gives you sort of the best storability of your garlic. And we have garlic that will last us until April. It looks a little shriveled at that point, but it's still quite tasty. And it it is something that you can use throughout the winter. We tend to keep selling it commercially in January because we don't want people buying our garlic with shriveled cloves. But and then we'll tell you that soft neck tends to store better than hard neck, and in our situations, we've not seen any great difference between soft neck and hard neck varieties as far as storability. And that is my presentation on growing garlic in Wisconsin.
Awesome. Thanks, Darrin. That was great. We have a whole ton of questions for you, so I'll get started on those. The most popular question was, can you grow garlic in containers or raised beds? And part 2 was, how deep do those raised beds or containers need to be?
So as far as containers, I don't recommend a fall planting of garlic in planters or beds, or well, planters in particular, or containers, because you get a lot of freezing from the sides as well as from the surface, and it's very hard to protect them. If you're going to do that, I would mulch the whole pot in the ground as opposed to just mulch on the top. So you can plant garlic in the early spring, and that may be what you want to do if you're going to do it in containers. Your bulbs are not going to grow as large, but you can spring plant garlic, especially the soft neck varieties. Raised beds, similar situations. You may wind up with some of the outer ones, outer bulbs are killed from winter kill. The ones towards the middle will be more protected with the mulch and everything, but they are just like any other bulb that overwinters, susceptible from too hard freezing, and raised beds are a situation. As far as depth, you don't really need to have it super deep. I would say no more than 8 inches at the best for a raised bed, or if you're going to do it in a smaller container to maintain good moisture, you may want to go with a deeper pot, though.
Okay, that is great. Now, somebody else asked, can you grow elephant garlic in Wisconsin? Does it require any different planting or growing techniques?
Yeah, so elephant garlic is a type of leek, and it is in a totally different species than your regular garlic. You can grow it in Wisconsin. You can grow it in as a fall planting, just like you can do shallots. I've not grown a lot of elephant garlic because I have some wonderful regular garlic. It's almost elephant garlic size now from my sizing up program, so I tend to not use that. But I overwinter leeks all the time, so I'm pretty sure that you can go ahead and plant that, just using the same sort of techniques of good mulching to protect it from hard freezes and moisture imbalances.
Okay. A couple people also asked about where to get garlic. Now, I know you said local farmers markets and local garden centers, but a couple people wanted to know about the grocery store with the type of garlic that you find in your typical grocery shop.
Right. Almost all the garlic in the grocery store is California Early or California Wonder. That comes from an area in Central California, Gilroy. You can grow it. A lot of times they will put an anti-sprouting agent in with those to keep them from sprouting. So you want to be careful about using supermarket garlic, but you can give it a try, and it would work well as a spring planted garlic.
Yeah, because you were saying that it might not be adapted to your climate. So you might not want to plant that in fall, correct?
Right.
Okay. Question about how far down the stem do you clip the scapes?
I clip it. It doesn't really matter. The further down you get, the woodier it's going to get. So you may have to wind up trimming it a little more up the stem once you want to eat it, because it does get somewhat chewy and woody further down, and the more mature it is, the woodier it gets. So I trim it a couple inches down from the curl, and that's fine.
Okay, questions about curing. How do you know when it's cured, and how long do you cure it for?
Right. So by the way, you can use green garlic. You can use garlic at any stage, right? In fact, you can pull garlic before it's fully matured and kind of use it like a scallion. You can use it freshly pulled from the field. Those cloves sometimes don't even have their own individual wrappers yet, or if they do, they're somewhat fleshy, so they're really easy to peel. As far as curing, we look for total brown down of the leaves, and when they are brittle, that gives us a good indication that the wrappers themselves are dried out. And so you can open up a bulb and check to see if those individual wrappers are dried down. And once they are, then you know that you're in good shape for curing.
Okay. Fertilizer. We have a attendee that's interested in your fertilizing routine. What NPK, how much per square feet, and when in the growing cycle?
So I'm fortunate because I raise all of those sheep that I use animal bedding as my mulch. And it's aged animal bedding, so it's it's composted manure. So I don't add extra fertilization because I'm already providing quite a bit of fertilization. You want to get that soil test done before you start to apply any additional fertilizer. If you don't have access to composted sheep bedding like I do, and then you want to go ahead and dress the ground before you plant them, because once you put that mulch on, it's going to be hard for fertilizer to work itself into the soil as sort of a side dressing. So, and you want a good balance of NPK there, as it is a bulb producing plant. You want to make sure that you're not adding too much nitrogen into the system and getting too much topset. So sorry, I don't have a direct NPK because again, I use my composted bedding.
As I recall, I think Ohio State has a really nice publication on growing garlic, although we might have one. There used to be a Growing Alliums in Wisconsin publication that's at the UW Learning Store. Maybe Madison, if you want to see if you can track that down. That did, I believe, list some more details on how to fertilize.
Right. It's gonna require the same fertility regimen as any of your other alliums,
right.
like your table onions.
Question about varieties of garlic. First of all, there was a person that wanted to know how many varieties you grow, and another person wants to know what varieties of garlic do you recommend for beginners?
I grow about 16 different varieties. Not all of those I make commercially available. Some of those I'm growing out and testing. So I have about 6 varieties, two soft necks and 4 hard necks that I sell commercially. And the rest of them are me playing around with different varieties and finding ones that are adaptable to my soils and climate, and then starting the grow out process. With hard necks, it's a slower process because you only get a lot of times 4 big cloves, which means you can't multiply out as quickly as you can with soft neck. And they're all about the same as far as difficulty in growing. There's not a whole lot of difference. I plant them all the same, treat them all the same. There are some varieties out there called Creole, and those are much more of a southern variety. They don't bulb out really well up here. It's very similar to a short day length onions versus long day onions. So the Creole varieties are the ones that I probably would stay away from, but I tend to find all of them perform quite well if planted properly.
Okay. A couple of people have asked about how much sunlight garlic needs to grow.
As just like most of our vegetable crops, a full day sun is preferable. I've not had shaded garlic, so I'm not sure how it would form, but I would say that its growth would be impacted the more shade you had. So I would recommend at least that 6 hours of full sun a day, and more if possible.
Okay. A few people wanted to know if you don't harvest your garlic in the, after it, when it's ready to be harvested, will it survive the winter and regrow the next year?
Yes, and you'll wind up with this wonderful little rosette of little garlic plants, because each one of those cloves are going to produce their own individual plants and bulbs. Think of how daffodils kind of form a clump after a few years. That's what you're going to get with the garlic. And so you're going to wind up with smaller and smaller garlic cloves, and they're going to start to crowd each other out. So I don't recommend leaving it in the ground. I have it occasionally where we miss a bulb when we're harvesting, and we'll get a nice little rosette, and I usually pull those in the spring to use them similar to scallions. But yeah, they will survive in the winter. I mean, they're just like your daffodils and tulips. They will make it, quite hardy in the winter.
Okay. Let's see here. There were a few questions about critters and trying to keep them away from your garlic bulbs and what you recommend to do that. And we've got about 2 minutes according to my clock here.
I don't have a lot of day on my garlic. I find even the deer avoid it. They actually eat the weeds and leave the garlic alone. And it's pretty incredible because I'll go out there and there'll be lamb's quarter that was towering above my garlic because it was a little slow to weed. And the deer will have come and clipped it back and not messed with the garlic. Occasionally, I will have 13-line ground squirrels will take a garlic bulb or clove. Same thing with voles, but overall, I don't find that pungency is there for a reason, I think, and that is to help with herbivory. What I find delightful is the smell. Critters may not appreciate that, all those strong sulfur aromas, but I don't see a lot of herbivory. I don't see a lot of insect issues. And very little disease issues. There are a couple of diseases that will affect garlic, but overall, that's one of the joys of growing it is a fairly easy plant when it comes to pest.
Okay, I think we have time for just one more question. A couple people asked about storage. One person said, do you close the lid of the boxes? Another person asked how many layers in a box. They have limited storage space. So questions about
as long as the boxes or bags are breathable and you've properly cured everything, I pop into the box. I fill a box up sometimes, and you can close the lids or you can leave it off. Either way, I had those lids open. We usually keep them closed just to keep dust and everything out of the garlic, but as long as your material that you're storing it is breathable and they're properly cured, you don't need to worry about spreading them out.
Okay, wow. There's still like 60 questions in here, but unfortunately we don't have time to get to those today. I want to thank you, Darrin, for being our speaker today.